Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Professor Roundtree here, Marketing 3401. We're going to talk about Chapter 13, which is retailing and wholesaling. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what retailing is, some of the decisions that retailers get involved with, and then we'll close it out by talking about some of the trends and developments that we're seeing in the retail industry, as well as discussing some issues related to the wholesale side. And we'll talk about how wholesale and retailing kind of connect in some way. Now, most of us are familiar with retailing. We actually frequent retail outlets, from the gas stations that we purchase our gas from to the grocery stores where we make our purchases for our produce, to going to Subway or some other sandwich shop and purchasing a ready-made sandwich. So retailing can be a variety of different things. So it's not just one thing. But the end result is typically when we think about retailing, it's our way of getting connected to someone who is producing something. And that production can be right there in the retail establishment, making a sub sandwich, or someone making coffee for you. Or it can be a physical establishment where they actually sell products that were manufactured in a factory. Now, one of the problems I think that most retailers are seeing is that with the explosion of digital and the various ways that we are connecting with people who make and produce things, it's becoming more difficult for the old-fashioned retailers to really survive. Many of the old-fashioned big box retailers, as they call them, are really finding it difficult to compete with the stores online such as Amazon. And that's because many of us are using these showrooms or using these retail establishments as nothing more than showrooms. So we go into Best Buy to actually physically handle the piece of electronics, to see how big a 60-inch TV really is. And then we wind up going home and ordering it online, or we're shopping mobilely. So we're finding that technology is creating all sorts of problems for retailers. Another one is very easy price comparison shopping using mobile devices within a retail store. So big problems for traditional retailers. Now, many of these types of retailers, you can break them down into three general categories. You have some of what we would call more of the self-service types of retailers. Those are the ones where there's limited interaction with someone on a sales force. You know, your Walmarts and your Targets. Yes, they do have people who can point to the aisle that you need to go to pick up the item that you want, but there is no active selling going. Contrast that with some of the limited service types of stores like your Sears as an example. So when you go to Sears Home Appliances, or you go to garden appliances, buying a lawnmower, there are going to be people there who will really try to provide really good information to us in terms of making our decisions and our choices. And then the last one, more full service types of retailers. You see this a lot in higher end clothing. So for example, Brooks Brothers are a very well known name. Many people who want to buy a suit go there, and they do everything from actually sizing you up, fitting you, custom alterations, making a selection. So very much a hands-on type of experience with the retail salespeople. Now, generally, when we think about product line, there are a variety of different descriptions that we have in terms of the types of environments that we're looking at where we actually go and engage in retail. But I would probably say, looking across all these different types, all the way from specialty stores all the way down to category killers, I mean, here we're talking about issues of product variety, and you also have to overlay that with issues of convenience. So convenience stores, as the description suggests, it's going to be their very limited number of items that we have in there. If you have to get toothpaste because you left it home on a trip and you go to a convenience store, chances are they might have only 2 brands. And if they have 2 brands, they might have only one type. So you might not be able to get that very special toothpaste that you like that would include baking soda, teeth whitening, scope as an ingredient that they might put in there. So it's very limited. and kind of contrast that extreme-wise with some of these specialty stores. Very, very narrow product line that they have there, but they have a whole lot of different items. So go to REI and some of the other stores that focus on outdoor camping equipment and things of that nature. Very, very specialized type stores. And the same thing for department stores here. Wide variety of product lines there. You'll probably find that they have some assortment, but not as deep as you would get in a specialty store. So you will be able to find a tent in the area over at Walmart where they have camping equipment, but you're not going to have as many varieties. Again, multiple types of retailing orientations, but the key point here is these are all different. You can contrast them mainly by the variety and depth and breadth of the products that they carry, as well as the convenience aspect of actually where they're located. Now, the four types of retailers that we have when we kind of characterize them by the relative price. Some of your more, what I would call deep, or your discount stores are going to be more like your Walmarts, and contrast that with the Rosses and the Burlington Coat Factories and the TJ Maxxes. Those are more your off-price retailers. Typically, you're going to get some higher-end brand names, some closeouts, but at the very same time, you're going to be paying a deep discount price. Your factory outlets typically are going to be in some of the mill stores that we see around the country now. And typically those are going to be run by the actual brand itself. For example, Nordstrom's has their Nordstrom Rack, which is their factory outlet. Oftentimes closeout items, items that have been discontinued, great pricing for the most part, but it gives you a chance to buy something from Nordstrom and not really pay the exorbitant prices you might get at Nordstrom. And the last lower right-hand corner here is more the warehouse stores. Costco, Sam's, BJ's, all of those are great for pricing, but the only way to really get the true benefit in those stores is to buy in the big bulk in terms of number of items that you have. So if you want to get a really good deal on Bounty towels, you have to buy 10 rolls at a time. You can't buy 4 or 2 like you can buy in a traditional grocery store or department store. Now also too, you can contrast different types of retailers based on what we would call organizational approach, or how they're kind of organized, and we'll take a look at those one at a time. One of the ones I want to point out here, without having a separate slide on this, typically these merchandising conglomerates, over the last 15-20 years, we've seen a lot of consolidation. There used to be an organization called Federated Department Stores, and now it's pretty much changed its name to Macy's Holdings. And Macy's owns Bloomingdale's. They also own Rich Department Stores, and of course Macy's, and several others around the country. And what they're doing there is they're essentially having a number of different holdings of retailers, keeping the specific or individual brand names within the local region, and pretty much running them as a conglomerate where they have a wide variety of quality. You can go all the way up to Bloomingdale's quality, and then you can go all the way down to some of the lesser known names that won't be at that very high end, but also very good quality, like a Macy's or a Rich Department Store. Some of these corporate chains, we see this in terms of different types, all the way from Sears, which is a general department store, all the way down to more what I would call a specialty type of store, which is health and beauty aids and drugs, the CVS chain, Walgreens, and the like. Typically, the size can vary. One of the trends that I think we're seeing generally in retailing is that the move is not to establish or grow or open the largest physical square footage that you can, but have a more efficient square footage. So larger doesn't always mean better. Sears stores pretty much are almost standard in terms of size, but it really depends on what mall they're connected with, whether or not it's an older store that might be part of a strip mall. When it comes to being in a physical mall where it's one of the anchor stores, they're going to generally have limitations that's established by the owners of the actual mall itself. But generally, these corporate chains are really there, very similar to what you would see in a franchise. They try to have some consistency in terms of the quality of the products or items that they put on the shelves, as well as the quality of the service you might get when you go into a store such as Sears. Now, we've seen this trend. This has been something that's been going on for about 40 years or so. So when we started getting the advent of these large retailers, what we found is that there were a lot of others who were relatively small and independent, and then they decided to band together. They get some really good cost advantages in terms of purchasing. And at the very same time, they have cooperative advertising that really helps to advertise. IGA is a group of, or a chain of independent grocers alliances. Basically, it's a grocery store that tries to compete with the Safeways of the world, the very, very large chains of grocery stores all around the country, Albertsons and some of the others. It's a good way for small, independent-oriented types of retailers to band together and get some of the advantages that a large chain of stores would get based on their sheer size. Some of these retail cooperatives here again, I mean, Ace Hardware is probably one of the prime examples. Again, these are all independent, and they tend to set up operations very similar in a way that they do with some of the voluntary chains. But typically what this is going to be is, for example, Ace Hardware, they're all going to be owned by the Ace Hardware chain. It's more of a franchise in a lot of ways. Same thing for some of the associated grocers. But generally they're run independently, but they do have an alliance that gives them some advantage in terms of the wholesaling aspect of it and the pricing, as well as some of the advertising that they actually do. In franchises, I think we see this probably more so when it comes to food-oriented restaurants. You can think of, let's say, for example, Jiffy Lube is another example of a franchise that's more of a retail-based franchise. Primarily, they do oil changes and then some other auto repair types of services. But by and large, the objective in a retail organization is to have independent ownership, but at the very same time, they have to abide by corporate rules. So, for example, all the food and the soft drinks are purchased through McDonald's corporate. There are certain standards in terms of the menu items that you include. The pricing is very similar. It might vary a little bit depending on certain types of regions across the country. But by and large, it gives someone an opportunity to be an owner of a McDonald's retailer or a Burger King retailer without the humongous cost that you might get otherwise. The initial fee up front, and also a royalty that you have to provide back to McDonald's corporate. So now we want to talk about what types of decisions organizations make at the retail level. And by and large, just very quickly, just like anything else in marketing that we've been talking about, it's really about understanding segmentation, targeting, positioning, knowing who your target market is. First, understanding how you segment the market, figure out who the target market is, and then figure out how you can position your particular brand versus another brand, which kind of ties into how the store is different. Is it going to be different along the product assortment, the type of service? Is it more upscale? Is it more self-service oriented? Is the pricing higher end or lower end? Do you have a wide variety of pricing issues there? Promotion, how do you actually promote your particular retail establishment? Traditional advertising, is it more social media, a combination of all the above? Distribution, I mean, physically you have to realize where your store is located will determine how people perceive it and view it in terms of positioning it in their own minds. So for example, if we're talking about Neiman Marcus, it's going to be in an upscale mall. Contrast that with a Family Dollar or some of the other dollar branded types of stores. They typically are in strip malls. They might be in a mall, but it's probably going to be a lower end mall. So again, kind of to reiterate, again, segmentation, targeting, positioning, one of the key underpinnings when it comes to understanding the marketplace. So the market segment that Whole Foods is targeting will be someone who has a lifestyle that's a little bit more healthy oriented. They're probably going to be a little bit more affluent in terms of what they can spend for groceries generally. They could be urban or suburban dwellers. That's something that they can service on both ends. But by and large, it's going to be healthy-oriented kinds of people who also have a greater disposable income. The product assortment that we're looking at, again, that really depends on the target market that you are focusing on. So, for example, the REI that I talked about a few minutes ago, the product assortment that you're going to have there will be very limited to an activity-based, outdoor, lifestyle-based type of consumer. And consequently, you're probably not going to have a wide variety of items that they carry, but in the areas that they do carry, tents and some of the other stuff that they'll actually carry, they may have many, many more brands and sizes and options than you would get if you wanted to go and get a tent somewhere in Walmart, as an example. And also, too, thinking about the service mix. Is it going to be a store where you have someone assigned to your high-end customers? For example, if you are a regular customer at Neiman Marcus, chances are you're going to know your salesperson by name, and that person will know you by name. Going to Walmart, aside from being able to read the name that's on their name tag, you won't know who they are, and they will definitely not know who you are either. Atmosphere. The physical ambiance, again, it depends on how upscale it is. Look at the no frills that you get in a Walmart and contrast that with what you get in Target. A little bit more upscale in Target, but nowhere near the physical atmosphere that you will get in a Neiman Marcus or Nordstrom's. It's not uncommon to find around Christmas season someone playing a baby grand piano in Nordstrom's, playing Christmas carols, or even sometime throughout the year. Very, very much upscale. The fixtures a little bit more upscale as well, to kind of be consistent with the quality and upscaleness of the brands that they carry. Now, when it comes to pricing is always going to be something that is going to be used to signal to consumers the level of quality of the products that they have, as well as the type of atmosphere that they want to create. And so, for example, if we're looking at a store like a Neiman Marcus or Nordstrom's, everything there for the most part is going to be high-end in terms of brand, and commensurate with that, we're going to see that most of the prices are going to be very, very significantly higher than what we might get otherwise. So, for example, there, the markups and the margins are going to be significantly higher. So even when they do a sale at inventory's end at the beginning of January every year, there's still a good amount of money to be saved by shopping there, but they're still making good margins. So even taking, for example, their prices and cutting them in half, they're still making a significant profit. Excuse me. Contrast that with going to Walmart. If they have their prices, there's really no margin in there for them to have any kind of profitability. Their margins are so narrow. They're really working on volume and sheer number of turnover in terms of items. Versus if you go to Bloomingdale's, they sell fewer items, but the margins there are considerably greater. Now, the two different types, high-low pricing versus everyday low pricing, this kind of gets again into the philosophy that we see with different types of markets. So, for example, Macy's is a very prominent high-low pricing. They typically charge higher prices on an everyday basis, but they run sales so regularly. I think most consumers have been conditioned, if they know Macy's and Dillard's and some of the others that do it, to know that, if you have what might be considered to be a common size of clothing, you might as well wait. You'll probably find yourself getting a really good deal. If you happen to be a very difficult size to find, you may have to pay full price. Comparing that to the everyday low price types of environments like, Family Dollar or Walmart, where the prices that you get when you go there, you can pretty much find every day. It doesn't mean they don't have sales, But by and large, you're going to see it's going to be discounted across the board compared to some of the other retailers you might be comparing them to. Now, when it comes to promotions, retailers make many different decisions. Advertising can be done at the national level that you will see with some of the larger chains, the Macy's or the Sears. Everyone does stuff online. Personal selling, that really depends on what types of products that we're talking about. So for example, if we're talking about a specialized specialty store, where there is an opportunity to engage a customer and to point out points of difference and to be very persuasive, they're going to have more people there who work on commission, who are really there to try to drive actual sales. You could probably argue that personal selling, when you think about retailing, you see that a lot when it comes to automobile dealerships. If we look at those broadly as more retail establishments. Sales promotions. Generally, when we think about sales promotions, there are a couple of types of sales promotions. There are consumer-based promotions, and those are promotions that we're all familiar with, coupons and the like, rebates, samples, all those are consumer-based promotions. And then we have what we traditionally call trade-oriented promotions. And those are going to be promotions that are being funneled through the manufacturer and through the actual retailer. So for example, in Target, they could buy Maxwell House coffee from Procter & Gamble, and they may want to buy 10 cases of those for each store. And Procter & Gamble might be running a special where they say for every 10 cases you buy, we were going to give you a case free, thereby reducing the unit cost per case for the retailer. And then that particular promotion is then passed on to individual retailers in the form of some type of sales promotion that they have within the store. So that might be something that would be an end cap display where they'll show, some sort of flash sale kinds of pricing, or it might be something that's in the Sunday insert in the newspaper, things that might drive traffic to the store, and then people will eventually buy other stuff at traditional regular margins for the retailer. Also, too, public relations is something that retailers get involved with. Target does a really good job at that, where they point to some of their efforts in their educational endeavors and giving back to the school systems in local areas where they have stores. They typically will tie it in as a percentage of sales, giving people an opportunity to essentially participate in supporting local schools by making purchases at Target. And also, too, direct marketing. We see this a lot, especially with traditional online retailers or retailers like Dell, who sell directly to us as consumers. They're doing a little bit more of the traditional retailing where they're selling in the Best Buys and the like, but by and large, the direct marketing that they're doing is done, and it's done through online. Whereas before the internet, it was pretty much, through catalog, pick up the phone and call the 800 number and engage a salesperson over the phone. So when we think about a physical store, think about what are some of the decisions that one has to engage in when it comes time to deciding which location do we want to open our new stores in. And some of it, the bottom line answer is you need to be near the customers who you believe is your target market. Now, Whole Foods and I think Starbucks do a really good job where they really look at trends within mainly urban areas where they believe that an area has an opportunity for growth. And so they typically go to cities like Washington, D.C. and New York and find the up-and-coming neighborhoods as relates to real estate values. And so once they see that there's an upward trend in real estate for a particular area, that's a prime location for them to actually buy up space or lease space out to open up a new store. And many other retailers typically will follow the lead of what we would call these bellwether retailers. And so it's the Whole Foods and the Starbucks. And most people will probably argue that if Starbucks is opening a store there, then there's an opportunity for a lot more upscale types of businesses, including retailers as well. Now, when we think about some of the trends, I'm going to talk about only a few of them actually. What we're finding is that the whole retail cycle, in terms of the evolution of a retail shop, the days of someone starting a retail concept and having that concept extend for 30, 40, 50 years and not have any change at all, those days are long gone. And mainly those things are long gone because this whole evolution is like a wheel, as the textbook describes it, where there's an evolution of change. And the change is coming from all the forces that we talked about earlier in the course with regard to macro environmental factors. And so, for example, if you decided that you wanted to be a low price, low margin type of establishment, realizing that depending on where you physically have that store, if there's an opportunity for a large, huge store like a Walmart or a Target to come in, chances are if you go head to head with them in a low margin business war of customers, you're going to lose. Contrast that if your margins are very high and you're selling more of a high-end type of product, it's very easy for someone to come in and actually discount and force you to bring your prices down. And so many retailers who come into particular locations and neighborhoods, when they typically come in, they're going to replace something that already exists there. And so as the story always goes, if you replace someone, eventually at some point someone will replace you. And so the key point is to continue to innovate and make sure that you change before the market forces you to change. Another concept or phrase that we've heard generally is convergence, and convergence basically just means we're bringing a bunch of things together. We see convergence in terms of media, where internet and television and radio kind of intersect now. I mean, so it's no longer very distinct. But when we think about retailer, we're talking about merging consumers, producers, retail pricing to create greater competition. And what happens is, because of this short life cycle, it's really difficult to have a sustainable competitive advantage for a long period of time. Retailers often merge. It used to be a time where Kmart and Sears were really strong competitors with one another. Now, of course, Sears owns Kmart. They got them really cheaply when Kmart was falling on some hard times. But even the two of those together, they pale in comparison in terms of what's going on with Walmart as far as sheer volume and revenue goes. But what we're seeing is some consolidation. We're seeing many of these consolidations are done in response to large, huge organizations like Walmart and Target. Which also ties into this whole point of what's going on in the opposite end to compete with those large, big box stores. Many organizations are trying to form these mega stores to compete with the likes of Walmart. And that's why Sears and Kmart are together to try to be a little bit more competitive. Even if it's just physically having more spaces where they actually do business. But the key point here is that unless you're able to integrate this trend of coming together, building conglomerates, merging together, unless you can take that and provide some benefit through your supply chain in order to be able to get you better deals in terms of your pricing with the manufacturers, it's all going to be lost. So it's not just having physical stores. It's about using the buying power to give you some kind of either parity or, if you're lucky, some competitive advantage when it comes to the pricing of the items that you put on your shelves. So we're seeing that there's these non-store types of retailers. We have several online retailers who really are just a mobile presence. Retail establishments like Retail Me Not and some of the flash sites, Fab or Fancy or some of the others, they don't have any physical stores. And all of it is direct, but it's direct through either online or mobile, and it's growing even more so with it being done directly through mobile. And so those trends have to really help some of these traditional retailers to wake up and, as they say, smell the coffee. And the last thing here, it's really about understanding the importance of technology generally. And here the importance of technology gets into issues like ordering and replacing inventory, online ordering of retailing if you have a physical store, some kind of integration within your store to allow people to place orders if you don't physically have it in the store. One thing that's always problematic when you go to a store like Best Buy and you scan your Amazon app to see the comparative price, and the price may not be that different. But you hate to find out if you're someone like Best Buy that there is not much of a difference in the price. However, you don't physically have it on your shelf because of the sheer limit of the quantity that you may carry, or maybe even the specific model of a brand, a TV or what have you. But having the technology where you can essentially integrate your presence online with what's going on inside the store, as well as using it for, again, inventory management. Most stores these days have some kind of self-checkout. Making sure you have self-checkout technology that is not only easy to use for the average consumer, but that's also reliable. Green retailing is a concept that I think we've heard for a while. I mean, it's been about 20 years. But it helps from a cost perspective, but it also helps in terms of positioning. It helps because those people who are concerned about the environment, having them believe that you share their values may make sense to you. There are some retail stores that sell produce that actually physically use the roof space that they have to grow some of their organic fruits and vegetables. So they're kind of vertically integrating the supply chain. And so sometimes what they'll do is they will use physical facilities to actually grow product that they can then sell as more organic or just generally fresh types of produce. The store design and the construction and the materials that you use should be consistent with what people believe and deem to be more environmentally friendly. The products that you're having on the shelves, we're seeing even traditional retailers devoting more and more space to organically grown fruits and vegetables. So you no longer have to go to Whole Foods to get that. You can get them at your local grocery store chain, be it a Safeway or Harris Teeter or Food Line or whatever it might be. The opportunity for them to connect with a certain group of consumers who would automatically go to a Whole Foods, if you can give them that option, maybe they'll buy some of their other groceries from you as well. Packaging and distribution. I think when you think about the packaging and just the whole movement that we're seeing, moving away from plastic and recycling bags in the retail environment. I know in the DC-based area, I think it's mainly Montgomery County and the district itself, where you have to bring your own bags, or if you want bags, you have to pay 5 cents per plastic bag. It's a law they enacted, I think, about 2011 or 12, to give people incentive to actually recycle bags. And I think that's something that works, and you probably embrace it more if you are more environmentally conscious than others. But it's a way to try to get people to not only abide by the law, but to be a little bit more environmentally conscious and also save themselves some money in the long run. Where we're also seeing that there is some expansion when it comes to retailing. The more the retail environment is experiential, the more difficult it's going to be to essentially export that experience without modifying for cultural differences will be. So for example, a retail store that we might have in the United States, you may have to alter not only the complement of products that you have, but the way that consumers engage with the service people within the store might have to be altered in European culture in certain countries, and also to pretty much in many Asian types of cultures. So there are challenges, and even with the United States, you have to make some adjustments within local markets around the country. So some of the things that you might be able to do in Mobile, Alabama, you might have to make some kind of change if you're a retailer selling the exact same product if you're going to do it in a very densely populated city like New York City. Anyway, that's the end of part one. We're going to focus in the next chapter, not the next section of this chapter, on the wholesale side. See you on the other side.